The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission Audit Subcommittee will now begin.
Good afternoon and welcome to the regular meeting of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission Audit Subcommittee for March 24th, 2021. I am Robert Pino. I also go by Jackson or Commissioner Pino. I am the chair of this subcommittee. As we begin, I will note for the record that this meeting has remote participation by members and city staff as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D-021 due to the declared local public health emergency. This meeting will be recorded and posted to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. At this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for the meeting.
Commissioner Crockett.
Here.
Commissioner Sparks.
Present.
Chair Pino.
Here.
There are 3 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Next, we'll proceed to our agenda, a copy of which has been posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. The first motion is the adoption of this agenda. May I have a motion to adopt said agenda?
Aye. Is that right?
I hear a motion from Commissioner Crockett. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Crockett.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Chair Pino.
Aye.
There are 3 ayes.
That motion carries and the agenda is adopted. Next item is the acceptance of minutes from our last meeting dated August 4th, 2020. May I please have a motion to accept those minutes?
I will make such a motion.
I hear a motion by Commissioner Sparks. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Crockett.
Aye.
Commissioner Sparks.
Aye.
Commissioner Pino.
Aye.
There are 3 ayes.
That motion also carries, and the minutes for August 2020's meeting are accepted. Next order of business is the acceptance of public comments. I will now open the floor and invite comments from the community. We'll limit public comment period to no more than 2 minutes per speaker. And with that, is there any member of the community on the line who would wish to address the subcommittee?
Hello, this is Dave Bicking. I just wanted to say it's great to see the audit subcommittee meeting again. So thank you for your work, and I'll just listen in.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bicking. Glad to have you here. Is there anyone else who would like to address the subcommittee? Hearing none, I want to thank Mr. Bicking and any future speakers for their comments. Next up on our agenda is reports from staff on current audits that are ongoing with the PCOC. And I have Andrew Hawkins here to deliver that report.
Hey everybody, hopefully you can hear me. I had some internet issues earlier. All right, perfect. So last year we had 2 items that have been moved, kind of review for the audit committee, which hasn't met for a little while, I think, as Mr. Bicking actually alluded to. So I think one of the things that we're going to try to figure out today is what it looks like in getting a methodology in place. That's in line with what this group would like to see from those reports, in order to get the actual work moving forward. The first item that had been referred to audit was a review. It was actually in conjunction with the city's trans equity committee, and that one was relating to hate crime reporting against members in the trans community. With MPD, I believe there was like some questions or concerns over the way that things are coded or the way that they're referred with regard to a standardized process that I think exists. For those to make their way to, I believe it would be the Minneapolis or the branch of the FBI in the Twin Cities. So I know our equity staff was being trained up on the system to make sure that they could start doing queries. For those of you that don't know, that's also the group that runs our Urban Scholars program, which is sort of ramped up here kind of in the interim. So I believe they've been fairly busy with that now, but I actually just spoke with the director and she's looking forward to getting, that up and running again. But we do need to connect her with this group to get the methodology and kind of figure out what specifically, is out there and what specifically you're interested in looking at. The second item we have, again, is more broad. We had, that sort of relates to the topic that I know this group has been discussing quite a bit, which is coaching. One of the items was sort of the former chair, Afshin Fruzan, had just sent a memo to the city attorney's office asking for responses on a number of items that were identified from another commissioners, like some independent research they had done. The city attorney had issued their response for that. I don't know if everyone in the group has it, but I'll send you something after we're done, just kind of based on where we land with this discussion. So I know they had issued their response from their office in terms of, what the history of certain parts was, what they were looking, what their interpretation was, et cetera. And then the other part was, I believe at the end of the meeting, the research itself is sort of referred to this group as well for further review. So I think that's one of the things to kind of determine as well is, what's the goal of this group, and in terms of that specific request, is it to go through, that kind of individual research and figure out, what's correct, what's not, what might be, a gray area, et cetera. And then, so yeah, that's kind of the update on that. I didn't know if you wanted to start to actually get into the weeds on figuring out the methodologies and letting this group start to discuss kind of what their questions are around the top, around these various topics.
Yeah, I appreciate the high-level overview on both of those. Correct me if I'm wrong, there might be a third that is really more housed in the audit department with the surveys and evaluations of 311 calls. I remember we had a conversation about that last year, and I know that it was something that was like I said, the lion's share of it is not within PCOC or OPCR's work, but more the audit department, and they had an ongoing survey. I believe we had a meeting regarding that last year.
Okay.
Have you heard anything about that recently?
I will look into that one. I believe I know what it was the calls for service.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I know there was an ongoing work from the audit department, so I'll check in on that one too.
Okay.
And I believe that this specific body's interest was more in, I know one of them was direct, one of them was the direct and one of them was indirect. I can't remember what one this was, where if it was the indirect stops.
Yeah, and I'm, I'm struggling to remember which one of it was as well. But that's why we're restarting and recapping, right? And we want to make sure that we refresh ourselves of all the work that we're doing and making sure that we start off on the right foot. So yeah, would love to hear more about that at the next meeting.
No, definitely.
I guess what we can do is, rather than dive way into the weeds on any one of these right now, I think it would be a great time to either have the three of us ask questions of Mr. Hawkins and try to dig in a little bit more of what the current status is of the two that he mentioned, the trans equity group coming in and reporting on the absence of hate crimes from their perspective, which from my own personal experience, I remember seeing that was the first meeting that I was there. They demonstrated the current report was 0, and that was surprising in its own right. And if you have any other questions about how we got to this point with these two, either the hate crimes reporting or with coaching, I do believe it was Commissioner Sarah who was doing that independent work, and that ended up finding its way over here for more of an evaluation to get a fundamental understanding of where we're at in terms of coaching, what it means, how we got to coaching as its current status quo, really starting at the fundamentals and taking an earnest look at that. But I'd be more than happy to open up the floor to Commissioner Sparks or Commissioner Crockett if you have questions regarding either of those two ongoing evaluations.
This is Commissioner Sparks. The trans equity report, that it's currently ongoing, right? It's in early stages, is my understanding.
Yep. Our equity staff is has been coordinating that with them and trying to get everything started with that. It's a pretty, I can speak from experience. It's a fairly comprehensive system to pull data from, and so I think there was a learning curve, but I know they've been in contact with them to begin putting that together. And yeah, I reached out earlier, and as soon as they have kind of some preliminary, because I don't know that if the methodology for that one came from this group or it was something where it sort of originated from the Trans Equity Committee, but I want to sort that out.
I remember having the discussion with Caitlin, the former chair of the subcommittee, about a year ago, and we were just beginning to have that setting up the structure around methodology. We weren't even getting to, an instrument more along the lines of what sort of questions should we be asking ourselves while staff is exploring what data is available, really.
Are we at a similar stage with the coaching? I don't know if it's really even a study, but the coaching thing that you touched on a minute ago.
Yep, I think this one, because it didn't come from another group, it's a more broad topic. It kind of depends on, I think, what this group wants to focus on. Like I said, there's been some various areas that have been explored by like the responsible parties, like whether it's city attorney's office or MPD, as far as providing documentation on background of things, legal analysis of things. And so, like I said, I will happy to share that with this group here right after the meeting if you don't already have some of that from the, it was meetings prior, but I believe it's all on LIMS. But I think that's stuff that's all kind of worth reviewing and figuring out what questions you might have based on some of their responses. And that might guide the direction we'd go. And then, in addition, again, it's a broad topic. Is there interest in the background specific to Minneapolis? Is there interest in what this looks like across other jurisdictions? As far as both like implementation or wording and use, or looking at, I guess, limitations on civilian oversight, just whatever relates to, that. I think that's what this group, does, is sort of fine tunes like that research. And so, if you have questions and stuff, I think now's a perfect time to try to hone in on, I believe, as the chair Pinell said, it's like, don't imagine we're going to get to like that finite methodology by the end of this, but I think hopefully we get us closer, and we kind of get a list together in terms of what you'd like to see, and then from that universe you can parse it down and have something specific ready to go here soon.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And just so that way you understand the timeline of this, this originated from the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee, of which Commissioner Sarah, the author of the independent evaluation, she's the chair of that. And so it ended up coming in through the full commission. The full commission decided that it would be an appropriate next step to have our subcommittee look at it and evaluate that process. And there's been no action since then. It's been referred to this committee, and this is the first time we're talking about it as a committee. So you're coming in just at the right time. Okay. Whereas the hate crime reporting of transgender people, that is something that's been going on for almost a year. It's been February when the group that originally initiated that sort of discussion with us. That's when they brought it to our attention back in February of 2020, I believe. So that's the rough idea of comparison of the timelines. And since we've had time to think about that, for me personally, since referring coaching to here, I've definitely come up with some questions around methodology, but I think I'm going to personally hold off until the two of you have the opportunity to review those documents. Mr. Hawkins said that he was going to send out both the document that was reviewed as well as the city attorney's response. I think that is a fair way of just looking at the whole picture of the issue, and it's something we can talk about, next meeting, really.
So just to make sure I understand correctly, the timeline for a case that's going to go through an audit that we're checking out is typically going to be like a year, or like 8 months to a year. Is that before it's?
I'll yield to Mr. Hawkins on that. I have not seen the full cycle, if you will, in my experience.
Yep, and I think it can vary depending on the subject matter that's being looked at. I mean, there have been some in the past that have moved fairly expeditiously. There have been some where just like because of the depth of the data, it can take a while longer. It's definitely hard. I mean, and again, like having gone through at least part of it, I think Chair Pino will probably attest to this, that like using last year as a measuring stick is probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Between like, I mean, there's a reason that we have such a, new group of people, and it's just, like between this group falling below quorum and between, having some, positions that were vacant, that were frozen, and us being definitely shorthanded on our end. It was just kind of there was a lot going on that I think, this was like didn't get the attention that, I normally would have. And so I would expect with, positions being brought in this group having, a healthy, the largest size we've had, it's like, I'd like to think that this gets moving again pretty quickly. So, but yeah, sorry, I know that was a long-winded answer, but I feel like it's worth making sure though it's noted that last year it's a tough one to measure by. But yeah, so with this, I mean, I think some of it, yeah, like the coaching one especially, if there's various parts of it, like it can be a piece, it can kind of be a piecemeal thing too, where there might be like an initial part of it that's expanded, so in that case the initial part runs quicker, but but the whole scope of the project takes a little longer. I think it's going to come down to like what this group specifically wants to hone in on and look at.
Yeah, any final questions about either of those two topics? I know, for audience members and people watching virtually, unfortunately, we kind of mixed both of those together. Obviously, this is a little bit more of a discussion-oriented format compared to the larger commission. I will promise we'll try to separate the topics a little bit better next time. A learning process for us all. But do we have any final questions?
Question for Mr. Hawkins there. So as far as like process, if we have something that we want to take through to the audit, it would be you and your team that would that would start that audit, and I'm sure you guys do like a million other things as well. So how much time do you guys dedicate to the audits that we request, or I guess what does that structure look like in everything?
Yep. So I mean, again, it's new with my group being the one that does this, but I think some of it depends on the subject matter we're doing, and I think some of it in the past, just from what I was just doing a review, and from what I've seen, it depends on the makeup of this specific group. I mean, if people on this group have the data backgrounds and have that desire to to assist with the analytics, I think then I think there's a little bit more interaction and things can move a little bit quicker. If it's solely on this side. It just depends on staff availability and what we can do, but since this has been on pause, I mean, this is definitely something that we want to get moving quickly. And then also, like I said, this group is essentially where a majority of the work for the PCOC gets done. Like all the research and studies that you've seen online, like this is where they were fine-tuned and where the data was gone through, and where the final report originated from before it went back to the full group. So I mean, that requires a lot, and I mean, as you can imagine, it's there might be, if this is an ongoing process, and it doesn't always have to happen here. If there's something that someone has a question, you can always share it. I think there is a lot of back and forth as we're going along with this, and so between now and then, between when we meet again, we could be at a new spot in this process. So I mean, at least that's the way, again, having not gone through this in its entirety before with this group, that's at least the way that I'd like to envision it happening, where otherwise it's just going to be essentially a review and report to this group, and then if that's the first time you're seeing the information, you're going to have to take it back, and figure everything out, and then the next meeting you'd be like, well, here's my concerns, whereas it seems a lot easier just to share things as we're going, and then we can have those discussions in a public forum like this, But at that point, you've already been able to kind of review things, and we sort of have, like gotten some of that stuff out of the way.
All right, thank you both for your questions. It's good to be jumping into some of this work, and you can kind of see where the roles that we've been talking about since the beginning of the year is starting to actually mesh with the concrete work and the results that we've seen from this type of group in the past. And if there are no further questions, I will direct the clerk to receive and file Mr. Hawkins' report. And the next item on our agenda is moving into discussion section. Again, this is more just for us, a space for us to propose ideas to one another. I have 3 items up on the agenda right now. I would encourage both of you, if you are interested in something, there's something that you want to talk about. Obviously, we can always talk about those sorts of ideas that you have, things that you want to research with the broader commission. But because that is the primary focus of this subcommittee, I want to create that space here as well. And it doesn't matter, in my opinion, if it's duplicative. I want to just make sure we're creating the space to propose ideas, talk with each other in an open forum about those ideas, make sure the public hears those ideas that we're considering, and if it's something that's not of interest to the either the 3 of us or with the larger commission, that's okay. It's just here as a tool to make sure that we're articulating the things that are of interest to us. With that in mind, the next item on our agenda is a discussion about our 2021 meeting schedule. I know we had a email exchange, the 3 of us, just to set up this meeting, but I want to make sure we're setting up a reoccurring meeting time. Today, obviously, is the 4th Wednesday of the month. I know that the policy subcommittee has their meetings on the 4th Thursday of each month. And just wanted to take a moment, chat with the 2 of you one final time, hopefully, about our schedules and how this will look for reoccurring meeting each month. I know, Commissioner Crockett, you said you have to do the early afternoons or mornings, right?
Yeah, early afternoon is typically the preference.
Okay.
Anywhere from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, 3-ish.
I'm fine. I'm totally fine with that on the weekdays, particularly, since we're in a virtual space right now. The only days I can't really do that is on Wednesday for me. This is the last day that I'm not having my job take over my Wednesdays, basically. So with those 2 parameters in mind, Commissioner Sparks, do you have Tuesdays, Mondays, Thursdays, anything that doesn't work in your schedule?
Yeah, Monday is my worst day.
Okay.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday would work. And I like this. 1 o'clock is pretty good for me. So 1 o'clock on really any day, but Monday I think ought to work fine.
So how about Tuesdays? So that way we're not conflicting with another subcommittee in case people want to watch both. Tuesdays at 1, the 4th Tuesday of each month at 1 p.m. Hearing no objection,
Works
I will direct the clerk to receive the acknowledgement that the audit subcommittee of the PCOC will meet at 1 p.m. on the 4th Tuesday of each month, and request that the clerk set up public meetings respectively.
Will do.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the discussion surrounding evidence recording errors. I put this on the agenda in response to the conversation that we had in our larger commission meeting. Let me pull up so that way I'm remembering her name correctly. For those of you following along at home, I'm referencing the meeting minutes of the Police Conduct Oversight Commission from March 9th, where point 5 property and evidence handling processes and procedures by Kirsten Hammerberg. Ms. Hammerberg, just roughly summarizing, made mention of the fact that evidence recording errors is a frequent concern that she handles in her daily job. And it struck a chord with me, and I know it struck a chord with other members. We did not have a motion or a directive to talk about this, but in the spirit of wanting to make sure we have the space to have that sort of discussion, wanted to bring it up to the two of you. If that is something of interest to you, should we look into that further? What are your thoughts on it, et cetera?
One of my questions would be, how do you see us getting the actual data?
Yeah.
Is it just their team letting us know when they've made errors, or?
Yeah, I think that's a good question of data collection. I see Andrew Hawkins has raised his hand. I'd be happy to recognize you.
Hey, sorry about that. Anyway, the hand was intentional. I just hit turn off. I was going to say, yeah, just going off a precedent too. Within this group in the past, what they've done is these discussions have taken place, and you can essentially have it's like a audit committee queue of projects that have come across, because I mean, again, there's enough that comes across this group, at any given time that you can lose sight of it. So when something of interest comes across, there was this exact type of discussion, so in the group, and then you just basically have that running tally that exists. So once their research and study is done and it goes to the full group, it's basically, if there's not something else that was, that just came up that's, going to get the priority, you go to your queue, and you just take the next, it's the next project up, and that's the one that you get directed to do. So I just wanted to let you know that there's other, from where I'm sitting, it's a really good idea. So for whatever that's worth.
Quick question regarding the queue. I just noted this in the meeting just by happenstance that I thought, okay, this would be something good for us to talk about. Is there someone who actually manages that queue? If not, I'd be happy to be that person to just be writing these things down and keeping them on here. But if there's someone else who's already has that responsibility, at the staff level, or if there's something that already exists, I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
I mean, with all the time, again, just with, last year the group as a whole not meeting a lot, I don't know. I mean, I can go and look and see what I can find. But I mean, since it's a whole new group of people, I think it almost makes sense it would make sense for me for that it lives with this group.
Okay.
And you can just kind of maintain a running tally of it. I'm happy if that's, if there's some version of that can just be shared and maintained at the staff level as well, it's fine. Whatever you want to do. I think it's an easy enough thing to keep track of. So.
Okay. Good to know. I just, I didn't want to take something from somebody if it was already handled elsewhere, but yeah, I'll hold on to this list, and it's a matter of public document now anyway, so we'll be able to look back at it and see what's in our queue. Commissioner Crockett, you brought up a great, point of just the practicality of data collection, right? That's one of the things that largely defines a lot of our research, is what is available to us as far as collecting meaningful data. And I think it's an important conversation to always bring up. based off of the conversation that I remember Ms. Hammerberg had with us, it sounds like they have some sort of system put in place. Obviously, that system is housed within MPD. But I think if it is something that is concerning to us, I would hazard to guess there's a shared concern there. I wouldn't assume that they would want to continue to have the errors at the frequency that they have. And if it means better policing and more efficient use of their time because they're actually not having these concerns around evidence, then I think that's a great starting point of being able to say, hey, this is something that we want to look at and try to help you improve upon. Yeah, I mean, Commissioner Sparks, do you have any questions or thoughts on it?
I don't think I have any questions. I think I'm following along okay, and it makes sense. So.
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to say that we need to do something on this. I just wanted to create a space here. If people want to go down that road, great. I will leave that conversation here and just make sure that we take note. We put it in this queue of, hey, this is something that we could look at in the future, unless either one of you wants to kind of take the reins, if you will, and say, hey, this is something that I am interested in. I'd like to kind of take the lead on it. All right. The next item on our agenda is actually one that I have added on here because I would like to take the lead on it. It is an item of discussion around safe and effective policing practices in response to public protests. A little bit of context, obviously, the trials of former police officer Derek Chauvin have begun with witness, what do they call them?
The jurors.
Jurors, thank you, not witness. Jury selection. And in response to that very first day, there was a public demonstration, which I am of the opinion people have the right to express their First Amendment rights. I think it's a good thing. And I know that we had protests throughout the majority of last summer in response to George Floyd's death, of differing degrees of response from police from various jurisdictions, as well as National Guard. And I know that with the spotlight that is on the Derek Chauvin trial, I would personally anticipate the protests to become more frequent, more active. And I think that it's within the scope of this commission to have a conversation about the policing response to those protests, more from evaluating our responses in the recent past and the current understanding of those responses that may happen in the near future, compared to responses of similar police departments regarding similar topics. Most notably, the Ferguson Police Department back in 2015 with the death of Michael Brown and the subsequent protests that came from that. I was just doing some research on my own time to just look at safe and effective policing practices in response to public protests. And I thought it would be, I guess, my end desire of this sort of discussion point is to hopefully draft a 3/4 of a page, 1-page paper to Chief Arredondo in the Minneapolis Police Department, just simply saying, hey, there's literature out there of safe and effective policing practices, so that way people can express their constitutional rights in a safe and structured way that, from the policing perspective, allows citizens to do so that is safe. And I think that a letter of some sort, again, 3/4 to a page of a letter that is based in research, peer-reviewed research of what it looks like and, why crowds differ in some different ways and what are the average impacts of different types of police use of force or police tactics in those areas, what the outcomes are from comparative studies. I am obviously, it's something that I'm passionate about. I would like to make sure that it's something that we have a voice in, of saying, hey, there's literature out there, by no means accusing the police department, but really just saying, hey, look at this literature. It would be really great to have policing practices here in Minneapolis be informed based off of this sort of literature. And if it is, it'd be great to know that. That's where I'm coming from with this final discussion point. I do have a few cited sources that I've kind of been digging into. They all should be publicly available. I made sure that they were publicly available, peer-reviewed research. I don't know the best way to share those documents around. Any advice from the clerk, links that I could put into the chat or something, or just generally discussion from the two of you, your thoughts on that sort of proposal from me. I'll first, since I brought up the clerk, I have some documents, like some PDFs and stuff that are publicly available. Is it appropriate for me to submit them for the record and then email them to you, or
Yes,
what's your recommendation?
You could put those in the chat and I can include them in the minutes.
Okay. All right. I will go ahead and do that. While I am doing that, because it's about 6 of them, either Commissioner Crockett or Commissioner Sparks, if you have input, would love to hear it.
It's a good topic, and thanks for already kind of looking into it. I'd be interested to see those resources that you mentioned. It was good that you were able to find something that was kind of peer-reviewed, as you said. A lot of talk about police response to public protests tends to get really politicized, and it's good to have, this is the right tack to take, right? Like something more neutral, like, hey, this is what studies show work, this is what other places are doing that seem like it works. Maybe this is a little opinion-based, or maybe it's fully opinion-based, but my observations on MPD conduct last year during the protests was that there was a lot, they were creating a lot of confrontation and provocation, and that was based on everything that I observed. So, but if you're going to talk to them about that or suggest changes, that's a bad place to come from.
Yeah, and in full clarity, you're not alone. I also saw a lot of social media posts over the past year that, to my untrained eye, looked like there was something wrong going there. And the reality of it is I don't know. I'm not trained in those policing tactics, but I know that there is, well-researched literature out there that is able to have a more experienced perspective on that sort of thing. So I figured, you know what, if have the person who has the experience do the talking, rather than just me saying, I saw something on social media and it looks like it's wrong,
Right. Yeah, I saw this video on Twitter, and this is, yeah, I didn't like it. Do something about it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I just want to definitely second what Sparks was saying. Is this is really great, Jackson, and the fact that you already took some initiative on it is really awesome. I think it's extremely relevant, and I would 100%, love to kind of back it in anyway. Question would be, as far as the research piece of it, is the objective like more of to have these source documents and kind of a evidence-based statement for um, the supervisor Rondo? I messed up his name, but the police commissioner, or is it to do like would we be looking to do like a specific study kind of based Minneapolis based and then provide some evidence or something like that?
I mean, my initial thinking is a timeliness concern. I would hate to have us sit on something and be doing research for 4 or 5 months without doing anything else, and then we've had a repeat of last summer, worst case scenario, and all of a sudden we come out much later saying like, oh, hey, you should be doing this. I think you could do both, where you could say, hey, look, we just did some quick research. We found these articles. Take a look at them. See if MPD is already implementing some of these things. And if they are, it would be really good to know about that, to know that you're taking this sort of approach to making sure people have the ability to safely and openly express their right to protest. And you're keeping members of law enforcement accountable when they don't do that. I think I'm going to take this time to now copy and paste it into the chat, so that way we at least have public record of this. But I don't see a reason why we can't do both.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I do agree with that. Is like, this is a practical, actionable step. Another question is if it like, because I guess it's probably not guaranteed to get a response. Yeah, and I guess my question would be, is there any way that, or any connection we would have to where it would garner at least a response of, oh, these are the things we're doing, instead of it being ignored or something like that?
In my opinion, I think that sort of a response is conditional upon the subject matter as well as our relationship with the police department, right? I have been told that in the past we have been able to foster a working relationship with the police department that shows that when we have something to say and we take our time to really make sure it's well backed in evidence, they listen. And I think that that's the reason why I put the work ahead of time of saying, hey, it's not just Jackson Pino saying you need to change something. It's Jackson Pino showing you what people with PhDs in criminal justice policy are saying about the issue. It's the Department of Justice evaluation of the 4 jurisdictions of law enforcement that responded to the Ferguson protests back in 2015 are saying on the subject. And that, in my mind, has a certain sort of weight around it of saying, hey, this is a legitimate proposal, as well as one of just saying, I would like you to consider this sort of stuff. And that, to me, I would hope, encourages a public response saying, hey, thank you so much for this information. Here is what we're doing on X, Y, and Z. And again, that's a hope. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't been here long enough to see the stuff that has worked. But I would like to at least give it a try and see what type of response we get.
I think we should. It's a good idea, and I think we should try. And I mean, if we don't get a response, we can always just report back to the PCOC main committee, like, hey, we sent this letter. Here it is for the record. We haven't received a response, and I'm sure there will be future letters and future situations too.
Sure.
And if nothing else, we can keep reporting back. If we're getting a response, that's good. If we're not getting a response, that's just something we'll have to think about in the future.
Okay. Andrew?
Hey, sorry, real quick. I feel like it's just helpful to jump in with context since I know we have new members about like similar things in the past. Like I think it's absolutely, this group has the ability to do, like I guess whatever method it like thinks is going to be the most effective off the bat. Like the two that I see just as far as like looking at what's been done in the past is kind of the initial version that Chair Pino talked about, which is, like here's what's out there. Like this is concerning. We, and basically putting that out, just kind of saying, here's our stance on it. We want to make sure you've seen this. And then there's the secondary version of that where it's more of a, a deeper dive into it, where there's actually, like more of a report and recommendations where it's, here are our recommendations. And like in that line, we've had like the body camera policy, like research that had the recommendations, please adopt the following, most of which I think were eventually adopted. Domestic violence response. So we've had, there's definitely stuff like this that has happened before. So I think there's those kind of two different directions you can go. And obviously, I think the deciding factor in each of them is time. So if there's an immediacy concern, you can do the one route. But then if it's something that still, is on people's minds, is something you want to explore more, there is a kind of deeper research and study route that would then come with recommendations, and that's passed along to them. With like, we urge you to adopt the following, and then they can, there could be a conversation that comes from that.
And that speaks well to what Commissioner Crockett, what you mentioned. So yeah.
I had the impression from previous Chair Forzan, that there tended to be a lot of recommendations or stuff that would come up during discussion that maybe there wasn't a response on, but they would notice MPD would adopt later, after the fact. Maybe they wouldn't get a formal response, but they noticed that policy and procedure or something like that would update to reflect something that they discussed.
Yeah, there's always a likelihood of that. It's a public meeting. This will, last for a good long while on YouTube, and if someone wants to watch it, then they'll be able to hear these ideas. So I think you're right. With the point of timeliness in mind, I am more than happy to take a first crack at drafting a 3/4 of a page or something based off of the information in these sources. Potentially a few others if either of you want to dig around and find peer-reviewed research that is of this similar scope. And I can throw something together. I can send it in email form to the two of you, and we will not only submit that draft in next meeting for us, but if it is approved, we will submit it for review to the commission at large. It'll be part of my report out at the next meeting, so that way we can hopefully get the whole commission to just look at it, have their thoughts and opinions. If everybody's okay with it, then we can sign off on it and send it out as a public letter. If it needs review, it can come back here and we can have another discussion about what needs to be fixed. Is that one clear? And two, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's clear, and if you have a draft, like if you send me a draft, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. I like to think I'm pretty good at distilling that information down into something that's digestible. The chief is a busy person, and his staff are also busy people. But if we can get him something that grabs their attention and is digestible in just a few seconds, we probably have a better likelihood of, or the best likelihood we have of them taking a look and implementing something. So if I can be of assistance, I would like to be.
Great, thanks.
Agreed. I think it's a great action plan. Simply, really straightforward. And yeah, definitely send the draft, and Spark's assistant on, or you guys everybody kind of working together to get it simplified and a good read. I think will be effective.
Great. Then I'm going to direct myself to do that. One procedural question for the clerk. Since I am writing something not in the public light, I would like to have it submitted. Is it possible to retroactively submit a draft document that I haven't written yet to this meeting, or will we have to wait until next meeting?
I believe it would have to wait until next meeting.
That makes sense. I haven't written it yet, so okay. Let's head back to the agenda now. If there are no more staff or commissioners willing to speak on that final point, I will say we have concluded all items on our agenda for this meeting. Seeing no further business to come before us, and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining with us, and we did it just under an hour, so I really appreciate the expediency of this as well.